Live tonight from the virtual Kentucky Speedway, LSR TV is happy to say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to round number 17 of the 2019 Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series, powered by Sim Racers for Mental Health. We're tonight from Sparta, Kentucky. We go racing from Kentucky Speedway, and we're so happy that you're joining us on another Monday night of action right here on your home for sim racing and the iRacing Esports Network. As always, it's myself, Evan Pasoko, joined alongside by Justin Prince up at the LSR TV booth. Our producer is Brett Wheeler. He's twisting and tweaking at aisles, bringing us to you this evening. And Justin, we come off of an exciting one from last week at the World Center of Racing, Daytona International Speedway. Jason Jacoby picking up his fourth win of the season last Monday night brings us to this evening, the end of about a month straight of action as we get that much closer to the end of the regular season with round 17, seventh to last race before the playoffs.
Yeah, there's lots more pressure for some of the drivers to try and secure some much more important points. Guys like McClendon, Fredericks, Caldwell are all floating around that bubble and cut line at the moment. They're looking to try out strong runs. But on top of it, we're expecting, obviously, a much more different race than Daytona, because this is, of course, a 1.5 mile track that is much more of a tire wear circuit compared to the others we have seen so far. Drivers are going to be finding aero-tight situations and trying to balance their tire wear from start to finish tonight. It's going to be the matter of who's going to have the best race management as well as the best skill to get their way through the field and get track position.
You can see that the racetrack relatively empty at the moment. Most of the drivers getting their qualifying times in at the start of this 10-minute qualifying session. Drivers right now just sitting through the drivers meeting as race control lets them know anything they need to be aware of as we get set to go racing tonight for 125 laps. Let's talk a little bit more, though, about what the picture is in this series coming into tonight, of course, with 16 races down. And if you've been tuning in with us on a week-by-week basis, should it be no surprise, Justin, that Andrew Freitas is still your championship leader, 117 points ahead of the next closest driver. Stanford, Kamer, Jacoby, Georgia, top 5. But as we have the last few weeks, the cutoff, the top 16 marker, that's going to be our focus. Scott McClendon with a rough go at it, losing 3 spots in the points after not getting points in an appearance. He drops down 3 positions. He now occupies 16th and only sits with his 12 points ahead of Nicholas Caldwell, who picked up a spot in the points off of last week. So that's what the difference is between being in and being out tonight. Of course, 7 races, a ton can change still.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of different variety in the races to go on the schedule. New Hampshire, short track. Watkins Glen, a road course. Michigan, a 2-miler circuit that's seen a lot of craziness before. Bristol, of course, a very tough short track with 200 laps. And don't forget tracks like Darlington and Indianapolis. There's a very big mixture of racetracks that will test the drivers and their abilities to get around the racetrack and gain some valuable points. It's going to be a wild next 7 weeks, but first things first, it starts off with Kentucky.
And that qualifying session is now drawn to a close, so let's take you trackside and take a look at tonight's Sim Racers for Mental Health starting grid. Pole position on this one belongs to Thomas J. George, a 30.068. Puts the Milwaukee Chevrolet on pole, and he will be accompanied by the number 27 machine, Ashton Crowder, starting this one in second position. Back on row 2, Connor Horn starting in third spot tonight, the 24, the 23 of Jeremy E. Miller. Alongside him will roll from position 4, and just behind them, it's Scott McClendon rounding out your top 5.
Valuable track position as well for Anthony Fredericks starting 6th tonight. Kyle Kamer and Shane Parrish will round out row number 4 in the 30.1s. The first driver in the 32s, though, was Brad Bohr, and a bit of a rough qualifying stretch for Andrew Freitas. He'll start the race 10th tonight in the heart of the pack.
Was one of the last cars to qualify behind Team Eric Stanford. Will start in 11th position tonight. He'll be joined by Jonathan Cadell in 12th. Sean Kalist gets the P13 marker this evening. Nicholas Caldwell will roll from 14th spot, and Jason Jacoby, looking to back up his win from last Monday night, has got some work to do in the J. Jacoby 88 entry. He starts mid-pack in 15th.
Todd Nobisat starts alongside him in 16th position, while David Washington's in 17th, the first driver in the threes. Tommy Gossett slammed the wall in the exit of turn 2 on his second lap. That bumped down the fastest driver in practice to 18th on the starting grid. Jeremy Bazemore, Rhett McBride round out the top 20.
Final drivers to take a time to qualifying session will round through 23rd. It'll be Scott Brotherton, Brian Chambliss, and Andrew T. Jones. So the rest of the cars on provisional times in the qualifying session. It includes 24th position as well. Jeremy Rittenberg will actually bump up a row from P25.
26th along that, Blake O'Connell, Kurt Rittenberg, Matt Miller, Dylan C. Jones, Caleb Weekly, all will start for the back. Weekly missing the start tonight. Second week in a row we have seen that from the number 10 machine.
Look top to bottom at your sim racers for mental health starting grid, powering this 2019 Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series as we get set to go racing from a flat and abrasive Kentucky Speedway. 125 laps of sim racing action are on the board, and as always, we are so happy that you're spending a Monday night with us right here on LSR TV at the iRacing Sports Network. Pace cars down and in, and it'll be Thomas J. George's field to control. Let's go racing from Kentucky. Green flag in the air for round 17.
And a very clean start up at the front release for the top 4 drivers. But you want to be on that bottom for at least the first half a lap. Then that preference is going to start shifting to above the first seam, to that second line essentially. So we're going to see drivers potentially back off, use 75% throttle, save their tires, and then charge back forward. But guys like Crowder want the lead now.
He'll spread him wide. Crowder's going to go to the very outside, but it is Connor Horn charging. He and Miller work the inside line. The Speedway Chevrolet really tight with no arc into the quarter. Crowder is also going to fade from that third and outside line, and Thomas J. George hanging on for the moment. The 3 wides behind for fourth is the 8 car. Kamer drives it hard. He and Scott McClendon are dusting it up as they're all door-to-door out of turn 4.
And it looks like McClendon didn't expect Kamer to get the run to get to the bottom line and was about to come down knowing Crowder's on his outside line. And it looks like this is something we discussed earlier on. Some drivers might try and shove drivers off the first seam and above the second seam where there's a lot more bumps and a lot more abrasions that can slow down, wear your tires, and potentially even damage your suspension of your race car. That's going to be a potential factor tonight. All that battling, though, between Kamer and McClendon has caused the leaders to separate by 5 car lengths.
Yeah, those top 3 have stretched it out a little bit as George Horn Miller trying to get away from the fight that sees Kamer in position for trying to hold the rest of the field off, and so far successfully. Again, he was the one who made those aggressive moves on the inside. Scott McClendon's going to end up being the big loser in all of this because Kamer got by, and now the 27 of Ashton Crowder takes a spot back, so McClendon falls to P6. Side by side behind them, we'll see Andrew Frenage try to come up through the field. He dukes it out with Anthony Fredericks for 7th and 8th. The battle for the race lead is on again as Connor Horn looks to the inside on George. It was a late dive down into 1, so it's not going to happen this time as he'll trace his line down the backstretch.
And he had a bit of help with the draft. You can keep within the range of the drivers. The thing is, though, once that clean air and the tire wear starts to come into effect, Thomas J. George might be able to pull away. I think this is going to, of course, increase the urgency for that Speedway Chevrolet to try and make the move and to try and take away that clean air from George and force George to wear out his equipment and then try and take off and away from the rest of the group. Everyone's single file for the time being inside the top 8.
Notable, of course, with this older abrasive surface, which is kind of become the calling card when you think about this Kentucky Speedway. We will see more tire fall off tonight in these cars than what we have seen at most of the intermediate racetracks with this 2019 package. So pacing yourself is something that all of these cars are going to have to take into consideration. That top 3 breakaway, though, has turned into a top 2. George and Horn stretching things out. Jeremy E. Miller is under attack as Ashton Crowder comes up on him. Here's the battle for 3rd spot as Crowder goes to the inside into turn 3. You can see Miller come down, try to pinch him off and make it difficult for the 27 to roll back it into the throttle, and he'll do a pretty good job of staying even with him. Crowder leads at the stripe, and he'll look to complete the pass this time in 1. He'll make the move on the inside.
And you really, again, want to be on that middle line above that first seam to try and make any sort of moves, or at least can't maintain a consistent pace. The way you can get it on the bottom, though, if you're within range, you do exactly what we've seen with Crowder. Try and pull off the dive bomb on the inside and see if you can clear on by and force them to go for the crossover, because then you can squeeze them on back, secure the position. Crowder able to now pull away, and you can see the difference already just by making the pass. He gained 2/10 in terms of pace compared to Miller last time by, having the faster car already.
We'll see if he's going to be able to keep that pace up. Again, he's had a bit of an up and down night, gaining some spots, losing some spots, is even with where he started, and that is running into number 5 position. In fact, one of the bigger movers, top 10, is Andrew Friedrich, who has gone 10th to 7th position. Somebody else who's on the move, no surprise there. We were somewhat taken aback to see where he was at the Q session. Jason Jacoby started at 15th. He's up to the number 9 position at the moment as well. So a handful of drivers trying to get what they can early. Again, this is not going to be a race if it stays green for any amount of distance. Like most of the other 1.5 milers that we've seen this year, Justin, we're not going to be stuck in packs of 5 or 6 cars, especially up towards the front of the field. So it's that 2018 mentality of get everything you can on the race start, try to get some separation as the fight for P8 is on. And it is Jacoby looking for another. He'll shove Fredericks all the way down the front stretch and into turn 1.
Yeah, he thought about it there, Jacoby, but yeah, you're right. It's kind of more like a 2018/backwards kind of thought process. You have to really use a little bit of brake in some cases. Try and make sure you don't overwork the equipment compared to a lot of other tracks where it's just straight up flat out. If you do that with this package, with this specific fixed setup, you're going to end up slamming the wall or the car above you. It's about trying to maintain your pace and being calm and consistent, because if you are, you can be like Jacoby where you just breeze on by guys like Fredericks for position.
And that's exactly what it is, so move him up to position number 8, and of course there's a handful of other drivers mid-pack making those sorts of moves, but first opportunity I think we've seen all race, 12 laps in to this 125-lap contest where everybody top 10 is single file for a brief moment. And in fact, of course, the interval's at the top of the screen. You can see Thomas J. George, your race leader. You can see the laps led adding up, but also look right under the lap counter. Car behind, that interval continues to grow, now up to 0.7 of a second. So he's really started to leave Connor Horn at a 24 in a realm of his own, and George is pulling away, still relatively early in a green flag run.
Now, it's very early, of course, in this run. We're going to see fall-off potentially up to more than 2 seconds as seen throughout the week across the iRacing service. And that's where a lot of the bigger drivers, the best of the drivers, come out to play. The ones that are able to save. But look what's going on with 11th. Brad Bull, one of the drivers that looks like who might have overworked his equipment, because he's opened up the door for Stanford, Gosson, and potentially Washington.
He's going to get teamed up on here. The 19 to Stanford is clear. The Aegis Ford Mustang gets by. The 48 will use the draft off of him to stay even. Now look to the outside. But those 3, 4, 5 challengers. Look at the 69 car of Cadell. The 2 of Nicholas Caldwell. Even 5 of Rhett McBride. It is a huge single file freight train. Gossett's clear, Washington's by, and Bohr may lose half a dozen spots here at a handful of lapses. Now at the front of this group, it's Gossett to the inside of Stanford.
Yeah, and if you look at the wheel for Brad Bohr, you can see how much of an issue he's got, especially 1 and 2. He is struggling to rotate center off with that race car. He's nearly turning the wheel, in fact, nearly 90 degrees. That's going to chew up your right front tire more than ever, in fact. And it's why he's now scrubbing more and more speed, slurring out his tires much more than I think he realizes, and why he's now gone from a top 10 starting position to the back half, potentially, of the top 20 in the next moments if he doesn't get punted around by Caldwell.
He lost 3 the lap prior to this one. This time through, he'll lose an additional 2 as Cadell and now the 5 of Rhett McBride, all on the inside line, have made the moves. And again, the bleeding is not going to stop. Caldwell in the 240. He's on through. Here comes Sean Kalis at a 43. He'll get by. Even Blake O'Connell, who was kind of pinched up on the outside behind him, thinking about going down low. Just a rough go at it for Brad Bohr, who didn't really have a good showing at all in the practice session. It was the second slowest, but obviously has the short run speed, Justin. It's just as soon as we started to see the tire wear at about 10-15 laps into the run, it has really gone off for the 48. So for the second run, assuming he can still fight for something worthwhile tonight, he's going to have to focus on not tearing this equipment up as early and trying to stretch that speed that he has off over the course of more than just those opening 10 laps, as he's left all of those cars behind him. And he'll fall in 19th spot, is a little bit further up towards the front. The fight is on for 8th spot. Kyle Kamer just lost it to Andrew Ferdinand, but is not willing to give it up. The 8 car looks to the inside, will not make the move though.
Yeah, his teammate, remember, they're both Aegis cars, ended up side drafting him and Freenash into turn number 3 and kind of scared Kamer up the racetrack. And that's kind of the aggression you need to have with this package. Dive it on in at the last possible moment, keep the driver off guard, and make the pass work. That's what Freenash did to move up to 6th. McClendon had the space more so for Miller up in front. So these drivers right now staying at a decent, consistent pace. They're actually within the same 10th of a second as the leader. But of this grouping, Freenash seems to be the most aggressive of them, because he has been one of the few drivers in this session, mind you, for this entire race in practice, I should say, that ran a full run of fuel. Drivers were actually asking him, were you going 100% in that practice session, trying to see how they stacked up to him?
And no surprise, of course, that is the name of the game for Freitage. As the fight behind it, we'll see Jason Jacoby follow him through. Those are 2 dynamic cars. Of course, 7-time winner this season, Freitage, 4-time winner, Jacoby. Those 2 represent 11 of the 16 checkered flags that have been given out this season. And if you take both of the plate tracks out of this from earlier in the year in Novosad and Cadell, then it would be 11 of 14 from that point. So certainly the cars that have been the best, but up towards the front of the field, starting to see something interesting, Justin. He kind of questioned when we saw Thomas George dig it hard there on the defensive end of things very early on, if he would have the race car to sustain the run. And well, 15 laps into the run looked great. He was stretching the lead out. It got to about a second, and we thought that might have been the end of the game, but Connor Horn has started to reel him back in. That difference between first and second is back to within half a second.
And I wonder if it's something with how George is running. He nearly scraped the wall, I think, last time by. Just was still faster than Horn, in fact, by doing so. So I think Horn's just pushing a little bit hard, knowing that it's going to be hard to keep up with him if he lets off even 1% more less. Plus, he's still within the draft, so that's going to give him some extra speed down the straightaways to try and keep this battle. But I want you to keep an eye, though, on that machine for Ashton Crowder, because he's quietly running the same pace, if not a little bit quicker each time. By is just outside the draft of Horn now.
It just a little bit further back, 1.2 seconds the interval. If he can catch them, it would certainly bridge the gap. I think the best case scenario for him would be for Horn to catch George, them to battle for just a small handful of laps. I think it would slow them both down enough for Crowder to get close enough to start to get that draft. But it has been an impressive recovery for Ashton Crowder after it looked like he might have been going to the race lead with that 3-wide move to the very outside on the opening lap. Fell back around P5 or 6. But of course, if he was running there now, he'd be about 2 seconds further down the track. So all the intervals for first, second, and third have been pretty constant the last few times by. Crowder, again, still out of striking distance as your top 2 are separated by just about 6 car lengths.
Yeah, it looks like all of a sudden George is losing minuscule amounts of time each time by, about a couple hundreds. It may not sound like a lot. The thing is, though, if you have that accumulate over time, like Horn has started to do the past few laps, it eventually leads to what we're seeing, where Horn is able to get within a couple tenths. This, however, is where some of the aero push might start to kick in, that dirty air that'll make it a bit more tougher to try and hold on to the back end of George and match his line. It's going to get a bit more difficult to try and hold on. Horn's trying to use a bit more of a deeper line compared to George to try and break it up, but it's going to get a bit more tougher for Horn to actually get within 2 1/10 from here on out.
And a battle that's a little bit tighter than this one up front, as we continue to keep an eye on it, is the Freenage group from 5, 6, and 7th on track. Freenage just in front of Jeremy E. Miller. Jason Jacoby's there as well. They're pretty much stacked up on top of each other, and Jacoby's going to want to make a move. He is looking for a top 6 position to the inside in turn number 3. We'll see if Miller really wants to put up a fight. He will. Jacoby gets tied, and nice move by Miller there, Justin, to push up the hill and give him some space, and that could have ended badly. Aggressive driving by both of those cars at lap 28.
Yeah, and that's the kind of racing I honestly was hoping to see tonight. Guys like Miller giving courtesy into turn 3, knowing the potential risk of contact seen in official races. If you try and squeeze, there's a strong chance some of the drivers might actually make contact and not lift the throttle. Miller, though, he looks like he has got a tighter car as Jacoby this time hits up.
Oh, and he's going to come back down, and Jeremy E. Miller will spin on the front straightaway. He locks it up, does a good job of hanging on, but the caution flag is out, and it came from that battle that we were watching. We'll take a double look with the LSR TV replay. I think Miller had gotten tight, Justin, because he slowed way up in front of Jacoby. I think lifting to try to make the quarter, very difficult for Jacoby to do anything there besides get into him, and it was relatively minor contact, but it was when Miller came back down the hill and door slammed him is what's going to be the cause of most of the damage on both of those machines. Again, though, nobody else involved, just those two, as our first yellow of the night comes out.
Yeah, that is not what I was expecting to see there. You're right, though. He did push up and was getting out of the gas to try and make sure he didn't slam the wall. Jacoby, though, didn't realize that it was just at the last minute causes the contact, and Miller might have been okay. He might have got away with very minimal damage. However, the way he was able to save it just drifted down to where Jacoby was still was on the track, and that ends up leading to the contact, ends up destroying Miller's car, and potentially adding some significant damage, potentially to Jacoby's car, for the first caution of the day.
Had a bit of an awkward time for the yellow flag to fly as well. All of your race leaders are going to be in, no doubt, for 4 tires and fuel. We were just about 10 laps away, Justin, from getting into the window to make this a 2-stop race. The magic number there would have been 42 to 45 laps or so. Instead, I think this will put us shy of being able to make it on 1 stop from this point, as, again, everybody's going to come down.
Yeah, we're looking at a picture of when we go back rain, maybe 92 to go. Some drivers were able to go 45-45 or something around 45-55-ish, or try and stretch it at least while saving, while holding in the clutch in some of the races throughout the week. The thing is, though, it's still very tight, even if you go the whole way potentially on the run. I still think you can realistically get into a 1-stopper, though, from here.
And a big change in the race off of pit road. Connor Horn does win out atop Thomas George. Of course, the number 1 pit stall tends to give you a great benefit, but here at Kentucky, that line into which the cars are scored at is way down track. At some places, it's no more than a pit stall away from that pole sitter pit box. Instead, this evening, it's about 4 or 5 times the distance, and it opens up the door for Connor Horn to take over the number 1 spot, so he will assume the race lead. Brian Chambliss is currently staying out to take a wave by, or just waiting to pit. He will duck down, so he'll fall to 11 laps in the negative. Just he and Caleb Weekly are actually off for the lead lap. Everybody else still on the lead lap, including the cars that were just recently involved in that yellow, assuming maybe they come back down and get damaged, but without the severe enough damage that would have warranted a tow to pit road. I think they're going to be okay. But the revised running order will have Horn in the lead, Thomas George running second, with Scott McClendon, Ashton Crowder, and Andrew Frenage your top 5. So a little bit of a shuffling of the guard up towards the front of the field. I would say, though, Justin, if we peek towards the tail end of the top 10, watch out for Tommy Gossett. Of course, has had an impressive debut couple of weeks here in this Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series. Still wants to park that car in victory lane, though. He's up 10 spots. It has cracked the top 10 for the first time tonight. He runs P8.
Yeah, and this caution flag actually helps him a lot in guys as well like Frenage and Crowder because they were looking good. The thing is, though, if the race ran green, there was not as good of a chance to be able to catch all of it back up by the checker flag unless they tried something different pit strategy-wise. Now with the fresh tires, he's got a chance here, Gossett at least, to try and push forward and gain a lot of track position. Remember, he was the fastest in practice, looked very healthy with this race car, or throughout this entire green flag run was one of the bigger movers of that said run. Wouldn't be surprised to see him get on moving along with drivers like Frenage, who are now back within spitting distance of the race leaders.
Jason Jacoby off of the pit lane, so is Jeremy E. Miller. Miller with a lot more damage in that duo. Of course, the two that had two different pieces of contact and turned forward to bring us to this first caution flag of the night. This restart will come just inside of 100 laps to go. Looks like about 92, I believe, this time by. So 46, therefore, would be the way to split it in half. Now that we have a concrete understanding of how many laps we're running under yellow, Justin, do we think it's possible to do that?
I think it's possible, yes, to go in a one-stopper situation in from here. Again, the fuel mileage goes up to maybe about 55 from about here. It's going to be tight, yes, but I think it's realistically in the cards for most, if not the entire field, to try and stretch us on a one-stopper. If we get a caution flag, that's where it gets interesting with the strategy.
That is always the caveat if it stays green, and well, despite the fact that we've been talking about this as a race that can spread out and see that strategy be a factor, nothing will change the exhilarating restarts that we've seen this season. And we'll get our first of the night now as the pace car drops down. Connor Horn in the 24 Chevrolet, gonna wait 3 seconds, puts the right foot down, green flag back in the air. He'll pull 5 car lengths to turn 1.
Yeah, the thing is, though, it might be a bit too much of a distance. Remember, with this package, you get a big jump. There's a chance that everyone else reels you back in by turn 3. McClendon and Frenage are the first ones to be able to fall in the draft. There might be a chance of them going side by side in the 3.
There's the dive down low, so McClendon get a challenge for the race lead. Oh, he can't make it stick. He's so tight and somehow doesn't take out Connor Horn as he pushed up about 2 lengths in the center of the quarter. They survive. Horn now again with 3 car length advantage, and it is now Thomas J. George counter-punching to the outside for second.
And George going to get that easily, having the position, but watch what Horn's trying to do. He's trying to break up the draft for both of these drivers down the backstretch, knowing that if he stays in one line, they're just going to pull him right on in and reel him in what line he chooses. He wants to try and break that momentum, and is why he's also going to this apron to try and give a little less extra RPMs getting down the straightaway for guys like George.
Trying to get everything they can. Ashton Crowder under attack is just a lap and a half ago. It looked like Scott McClendon might have been leading this race. Instead, that nearly catastrophic attempt in the inside line has cost him 2 positions. He runs 4th now in this line, and I'm not sure how long this is going to last either, because here comes Andrew Frenage, still sporting that throwback number 88 paint scheme on his Ford Mustang. It's been good to him in the last few weeks. He'll look to the inside. I think this fight for P4 is the one to watch in the top 5.
I think it's going to get very intense for this battle for position, because I think Frenage is the faster driver, especially on the long run. We've seen it all season. On top of that, you got Gossett that just dive-bombed his way through turn 3 to gain a couple tenths alone on that battle. So you got 2, 3, maybe 4 different drivers that are looking to make this pass. And mind you, too, McClendon got lucky he didn't get damage from that contact before. The thing is, though, it's the question of, is he going to be tight now the way he's pushing just to hold on to track position?
That's always the question. Is it worth fighting for these positions now? Of course, the concern is if you're not aggressive, if you don't have that intensity, you might have a better race car in 20 laps, but if they got away from you and you can't make up the distance, you're in a tough position. So these drivers have to walk the line. They are multi-year veterans, most of them, not just of this Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series, but of course the iRacing service and these Cup Series cars. So they know how to make it work. Top 10, though, single filing out now at lap 39.
Yeah, you mentioned it there, drivers that have multi-years experience, not just again with the series, but across the sim, or guys like Crowder, who mind you are part of the eNASCAR Peak and Freeze iRacing series. In fact, Crowder brought his spotter, I think, from the series and Justin Lisenby to help him with tonight's race, knowing the potential craziness on some of these race starts we have seen with this package, I think. And he's one of the drivers, again, that have had some strong runs, just zero luck so far on this campaign when he's been running at the front.
And just looking through now, big battle outside of the top 10. It sees Rhett McBride in the 5 car in 12th spot, trying to hold off a couple of hungry hounds behind him. Dylan Jones at the inside. Blake O'Connell up top, the 2 and Nicholas Caldwell. At a 64 of Andrew T. Jones. So here's a nice soiree as O'Connell's got a huge run, but nowhere to put the car, boxed in behind the 5.
And he had to pull that off, knowing if he lost that line, that would open up a potential revolving door for not just O'Connell, for Jones to fall in on the outside and maybe Caldwell. So he had to try and pull off the slide job to stop that momentum and keep the position. Jimmy Johnson, I think, said this the best during Chicagoland, where he was, of course, known as more of a patient driver and kind of the long-run kind of pace driver with the last package before this one. He said himself he had to be more aggressive to try and battle for race victories and for positions. We're seeing that now for a lot of these guys as McBride has opened up that revolving door I mentioned.
And McBride will slide wide off of 4. Here's some counter move to the inside as Nicholas Caldwell will go to take this number 14 spot away, and a nicely executed move will allow him to be clear by the time they get to the corner. And the 5 car lifts. That 2 machine of Caldwell was absolutely clear, Justin, but he didn't make the move right away. And when he slowly started to tiptoe up, McBride was coming, and a 5 machine lifted to avoid a bad scenario there. And I don't know what he said, but he definitely queued up on a radio, and I'm sure he was not happy with what happened there.
Yeah, I don't think he'd be happy either, especially with that. It's going to, again, lose him more time, and there was the chance of, if you get damaged, especially at this kind of a track with this package, you are likely going to be down on straight line speed and potentially being a revolving door. But I think that situation might have shot McBride's tires. He's going backwards now. You know, it continues to get worse and worse. He ran in 31.7s from that after that last time by. Everyone else still in the 31.3s.
Payless and other drivers, Jeremy Bazemore trying to get into the mix here as that inside move from Brotherton going to pay off this time, and he gets by McBride, so Brett needs to try to pick up the pace and find something as this run gets onto the longer stages of things, and then closer to the front of the field as we've been watching the 98 machine to David Washington. This battle in and around, of course, the nod to Thomas J. George is in second position. Half a second off for the race leader, still defending Ashton Crowder. So a couple of sets of cars here and there, but Horn relatively unchallenged after a pretty good restart.
Yeah, no one's gotten really within 7 or 8 tenths for the most part, other than maybe George this entire run so far. And he's just taken advantage of that clean air. He's not the fastest car per se, yes, because he doesn't have the help of the draft down the straight. But with that clean air, it really helps you be able to hold in the throttle a little bit more down the straightaways and not burn your tires up as much compared to, say, everyone else that's trying to follow inside your wake, that's going to have to try and make sure they don't push up while following that drift up towards the wall. So it's going to help a little bit, but Crowder wants second right now.
He wants the spot, and of course, getting it is Going to be a big step for him to go to the race lead. And look at the slide job. He goes down low, pulls up in front of the 9. And even though he was slower, there was nothing George could have done there. And all he could do was give him a shot to the back end. And maybe a little bit of, I'd say an aggressive move, certainly. Still not even halfway into this Kentucky 125. But Ashton Crowder doing what he needs to do because he was seeing Connor Horn add a half a tenth to his advantage lap by lap. And he knew he had to get around George if he wanted to stop that. Now that he has this pocket of clean air, we'll see just how fast this 27 Toyota is. And if he has a chance to reel the 24 car in.
And he's already gained a couple tenths in this past time alone. The fastest car on the racetrack inside the top 10 in the 31.5s. So all of a sudden, it's looking like he's gotten the green light. He's going to try and push it, looks like, to try and close this gap as much as he can. Might have been trying to stay behind George, seeing his opportunity, knowing George, as I mentioned, looked tight in clean air on the last run when he was the leader. Crowder might have a chance potentially to reel in Horn in a similar fashion that Horn did to George in the last run.
And it has been these three. They right now run in reverse order. It started George 1, Crowder 2, Horn 3. They're flip-flopped. It's Horn to the race lead. Crowder still the middle of this sandwich, and George, your posted, are running in third position at the moment, but it has been largely in part a three-car show. If we get another yellow or this run goes through green flag pit stops, I think that changes because Faridaj, Gossett, Washington, all run right now 5th, 6th, and 7th on the racetrack, only about 3/4 of a second behind them. If they can get into this picture, it'll completely change the complexion of the race because up to this point, it's just been really these three going at it. But Crowder looks like he's primed to go to the race lead. He's reeling the 24 in. We'll see if he'll be able to complete the move, though, at lap 51.
Yeah, it's going to take him a few laps, I think, to even try and work himself forward, kind of like a short track mentality to try and reel him in. It's been the same case, I think, for Freenage for the most part. Hasn't gotten a run yet at McClendon. Maybe is trying to save his stuff and knows that there's the chance he can potentially pull off the undercut and take the different strategy. The window won't be open, I don't think, for at least another 20 laps or so, because drivers, if they say pit at 55 to go, would have to save fuel, hold in the clutch on their entries for about, say, 4 laps to make sure they get to the good. The more longer you can go, the better I think you will be in terms of the fuel mileage, but the more of an undercut you get, the more time you're going to gain on the racetrack, since everyone's in the 31.8s with the fall off. The drivers at the start of the race on fresh tires and throughout the day have been in the 30 flats on fresh Goodyears.
And the fall off comes really quickly in, and it's a little bit slower on this second half of the run. Of course, still about 20 laps away from the magic number if you're going to be able to stretch this to a one-stopper to the end. I think Horn has done a relatively impressive job of picking up the pace once we really saw Crowder start to lay into him. But I think where you got to watch right now is the battle for the number 4 position, because McClendon's about to get teamed up on by everybody else in line. That Freenage Washington group of cars, they're closing in now. Pass won't happen this time. But keep an eye on the 88 machine. He's right there. McClendon to the inside, shuts the door again.
They're marginally running the same pace the drivers behind. However, I think it's getting to where Freenage is actually getting held up by McClendon here. I think he's getting a little less impatient, knowing there's the chance the leaders can pull away a little bit more. The gap is currently 1.6 seconds. I think he wants to try and get this done now, especially since George is falling back to them. So if he can try and leapfrog McClendon, then pull George in, then leapfrog George, he might be able to get enough of a buffer with some draft to make it a 3-car battle for that lead.
And it's all about timing. It's the same reason why, of course, Crowder wanted to make the move on George as quickly as possible and resorted to those aggressive tactics. Was, you can have faith that your long-run speed is going to put you in that position, but it's all about margins. It's all about working the draft, and if you get stuck in a group of 3 or 4 and find yourself 2 seconds behind somebody, you don't have the draft, and the cars behind you are going to stay on you, and you are not going to be able to use that same kind of draft to catch up to those that are trying to run away. So we watch this chess game that continues inside of the top 5. battle for the race lead still rages on. Crowder doesn't seem, though, too rushed. He hasn't made those big dives to the inside on Connor Horn, and maybe a lot of that could be just positioning by that Speedway Chevrolet in the race lead to not allow Crowder to get to his inside. I'm sure he saw how he made the move on George, so Horn's protecting the bottom line. So far, it appears to be working for him as the difference stays at 3 car lengths.
It's really a chess game, kind of mind game, so to speak. If we've seen this with guys like Freenosh with battles with Horn. They let Horn lead and have him burn up his equipment rather than force themselves to burn up their equipment. If they can force him to be the runner instead of forcing them to chase, then take advantage and pass him by and then take off, that's usually been the winning move for a lot of cases, especially in the early race editions of Freenosh v. Horn. We've seen at tracks like Las Vegas, like Charlotte, etc., a lot of different events. I'm not surprised to see this from Crowder because he might be doing the same thing. In fact, he actually braked earlier than 24.
Trying to back himself up a little bit and go for those runs off of the corner to make his run better. And through all of this, they continue to stretch. George in third is a second behind them. Freenosh did win out in that fight with McClendon, as noted. So Freenosh is up to fourth, and surprised that David Washington struggling a tad bit on this long run. Shane Parrish might duke it out for 6th and 7th in a few laps, but he is not immediately pressuring McClendon for the top 5 spot. I thought the 98 would have been more so right on the heels of the 88, but at least not the case at this point, as we'll put 60 laps behind us this time by the start-finish.
Yeah, still a ways to go, and we're slowly approaching that pit window. I wouldn't be surprised again to see maybe a couple drivers try an undercut, because it might be the difference of 4 or 5 seconds on the track. The curious thing, though, is at some of the racetracks we've seen where the fall-off seems to even out in the same 5-lap cushion to the rest of the drivers around you, compared to, say, a driver who pits at lap 50 of a run to 55. That has been crucial in a lot of the cases. With this track, it's kind of a wild card. It sometimes could work, it sometimes could not. I don't know what we're about to see in terms of that, because I think the drivers that go for the undercut might be more susceptible to be reeled back in much quicker than every other mile and a half we've seen all season.
And so far, nobody has made that really early dive. As we set off for the race start, the only drivers off of the lead lap were Gossett and Weekly. Joining them, as mentioned, Tommy Gossett, who had an issue, lost connection to the server. He was the top 10 car. It appears that his night is done, so he joins Weekly, Chambliss, O'Connell, and Jason Jacoby as the drivers who are out of this race. Of course, Jacoby took on some pretty heavy damage in that only yellow flag we've seen tonight, and Blake O'Connell had some issues that forced him to pull off for the racetrack as well. So there aren't a lot of cars lingering around. 1 lap down or 2 lap down, you're either in this thing or you are not. And this time by, we'll take halfway home in this evening's Kentucky 125. And with pit stops on the horizon shortly, let's use this opportunity to take a look at our Ford Entertainment Group midway race break. Connor Horn currently scored as your race leader, just 3/10 up on Ashley Crowder. They continue to follow each other around, all 1 second ahead of Thomas George, who's still on his own in the number 3 position. Freenosh runs in 4th. Scott McClendon exactly where he started in the number 5 position. David Washington still P6. Shane Parrish has scored in 7th spot. Dylan C. Jones to a race high P8. Don't count the 03 Ford machine out. Stanford's behind Tim in 9th, and Kyle Hamer rounds out your top 10.
Jonathan Cadell's been quietly running in 11th spot. He had a decent pit stop on the caution flag, but elected to immediately drop on back and let some of the drivers burn up their equipment. Guys behind him now are Andrew T. Jones and Nicholas Caldwell. Rhett McBride has fallen back to 14th, with Scott Brotherton up 6 spots since the drop of the green flag today in 15th. Sean Kahlist is in 16th, with Jeremy Bazemore 17th. One of the drivers near the bubble is 18th spot. It's Jeremy Renenberg in the 26 machine. Anthony Fredericks, remember he started off inside the top 10. He's got some right side damage, is now to 19th. Kurt Renenberg is the next car position behind for 20th.
Jeremy E. Miller is just behind Tim in the number 21 position. That's another one of the cars working with some damage tonight. Miller started fourth. Behind him, Brad Bohr, who was also a top 10 car. He's way down in 22nd position, trailing only by Matt Miller in 23rd, and Todd Novosad in 24th position is the final car on the lead lap. Kayla Wheatley still kicking it 5 laps down in position number 25. Chambliss is 10 laps down in 26th. But Tommy Gossett, Blake O'Connell, and Jason Jacoby are all behind the wall in 27th, 28th, and 29th. That's a complete look top to bottom at your Ford Entertainment Group Midway Race Break. FEG PC has been serving the iRacing community with custom-built affordable computers specifically built and tuned for iRacing. Your PC will come with everything you need preloaded so you can get racing as soon as it hits your doorstep. Get yours today and join the 600-plus iRacers already enjoying a Ford Entertainment Group computer. PCs to fit every budget from $540 and up. You can go online to www.fegpc.net and mention code LSRTV10 to get your build quoted today. Battle for the race lead still ongoing as off of a restart that came at lap number 33. We are nearly 40 laps removed from that point and almost at the halfway point to the end as the magic number on fuel is about 6 laps away. Do we see anybody dive down early?
I don't, at least not for another couple laps, but take a look what's happening with this lead. I think Horn's tires are finally starting to light up with the right rear specifically. And Crowder is saying, I'm going to have to pit in just a few laps, right? I may as well try and push right now and get this track position and let myself dictate the pit strategy, not Horn on this racetrack. He nearly pushed in the past couple laps or so to try and take this lead, but it looks like Horn is now struggling more than Crowder, who is now able to ride that yellow line, while Horn is trying to fight just to get towards the middle of the bottom line.
And will Horn use this as kind of a sign to dive down to the pit lane? Here's another big drive down into turn 3. Horn all the way with the left side tires on the apron that time, trying to get that car to rotate through the quarter. We'll see if Horn can continue to hold him off. I think there's no doubt here, Justin, for how long Crowder's been running behind them, and I think the 27's got a better car, but the margin isn't a lot. If it was a lot, he would have been able to muscle that NASCAR America machine around. He's a little bit better, but it is not enough, I think, to take away the track position and the line preferences that Connor Horn set for himself. And I think if Crowder could get by, he could start to stretch a few tenths, which is why for Horn it's critical to not let that 27 go before pit stops.
Exactly, you don't want to end up losing them. And again, the main difference, again, if you short pit, it could be up to maybe 2 to 4 seconds a lap you could gain, but there's the major risk of it coming right on back, so I'm not surprised Crowder's pushing. The thing is, he just pushed a bit too much, nearly tapped the wall and lost himself half a tenth.
That's what you get when you push. These top two have really stretched it out since that midway break not that long ago. They've added another 7 tenths to Thomas George. In fact, George is under fire from Andrew Friedage in a battle for third to fourth. So the 88 car is closed in, and he might snag another one before he has to come down for service. He'll look to the inside at one. Kind of a half-hearted defense for the 9 car as the one of Jeremy Bazemore is the first to pit road. Friedage can't make the pass.
And we just hit the magic number, just about 53 to 52 to go on the racetrack, so I'm not surprised Bazemore's trying it. He's been in the back half of the top 20 all race. Now it becomes the question, when does all the other leaders decide to duck it down the lane at this point? Because remember, we went green on lap 34 in this event. We are slowly but surely approaching again that mark to have to pit, but third spot, I think Friedage has a strong chance if he can force it in underneath and maybe force George off his line, or at least try and at least scare him off his racing line.
It looks like a very similar thing to what we saw in the battle for the lead, and that is Friedage made a couple of attempts to go down to the inside, try to make the bottom work. I just don't think that these cars can kind of ring it around the top or middle line, but if the 9's going down there, but it's just not going to happen. You're almost going to have to catch him sleeping like that, a big sweeping move down low. But even then, if you can't get the nose to the quarter panel, you're not going to be able to set up that spot, and the battle will continue on through as we are seeing great tandems for first and second position, for third and fourth. But this time by, we will take lap number 75, put it in the back pocket, take 50 laps to go in this race. Now technically just at everybody inside of the fuel window. I'd expect them to go another 5, though, to make it a little bit more even.
More cars are ducking in the back end of the field, though. Jones, Kamer, Brotherton, Renenberg, Jeremy Renenberg, Anthony Fredericks all just ducked it down along with Jeremy E. Miller. Some of those drivers are going to be noteworthy because their teammates are some of the drivers up in the front. It's going to be curious to see what they find out what the tire wear situation is for their respective teammates, and then that could potentially dictate when those drivers elect to dive it down to the pit lane in this event in the next couple laps or so.
And is this an opportunity for an undercut? If I'm Crowder, if I'm Freenage, I'd be willing to slice a few laps off of my targeted number just to go for the undercut. We talked about the tire fall off. Say Ashton Crowder, last lap a 32.3. That is over 2 seconds slower than the fastest lap that he has run this evening. So it wouldn't be crazy to think that doing that might make the difference. As Freenage goes to the inside again, side by side, it'll be difficult to make this inside work with virtually no arc into turn 1, and the 9 car looked like he has it. Thomas J. George, a nice run on the middle.
Just couldn't get enough rotation off the corner on that bottom side because it gets so tight and you have to basically lift off the throttle to make sure you don't door the driver into the fence above you. It's that point again where it's tough, and look at McClendon, he's trying to take advantage of it.
John McClendon's been a third car in this group that's just been watching, and just like that, he passes Freenage. He'll go to the inside on Thomas George. Thought he might have got the twofer. It's not going to stick, and curious how long his move on Freenage will work now, as he'll end up stuck at the inside as the other two now work the middle or normal line. Ashton Crowder is falling off a horn, and horns in. Your race leader comes down pit road at lap number 79. Crowder is going to assume the race lead, and a 3-car battle we were watching now becomes the fight for second. I like that move, though, from your race leader. Connor Horn with a nice call.
He might have lost a few tenths, though, on the pit entry. He nearly lost the back end trying to downshift to second gear, but is still off and away into the pit lane. Now comes the question, when does guys like Crowder decide to come in? If I was Crowder, I would come in either this time or next time by, try and either follow it off or have a little bit more of a fresh tire difference. That could potentially be the difference if it can close the gap. Everybody else inside the top part of the group, though, staying out of the track except for Jonathan Goodell inside the top 10.
No surprise that we are starting to see all of this cycle through, and you do have those names, as Cadell, you mentioned, is on the pit lane, starting to get closer and closer to the front, but I am surprised that it was not an immediate reaction by Ashton Crowder to come down pit road there. I actually thought that because he was the one fading, he would have come in before Horn. Here he is. The 27 is in from the race lead. Thomas George pits from second. Andrew Freenage wants the long haul this one. He and McClendon now take their fight to the race lead as they both stay out now through 82.
Honestly, I actually might like this decision here because while I, yes, might be the driver that would end up doing this, when thinking in hindsight, the equalization of the tires on one lap might be not enough to even make the move to try and get the race victory on Horn. It might be the same situation. If you take that little extra bit of fresher tires, it might be just enough to make the pass, maybe gain about a tenth a lap on the run to try and reel back in Horn. I think this might be a decent move, actually, for Crowder to try and at least do something different to get the spot.
Always a chance, too, that you start to stretch the run out a little bit. And
nearly looped it onto the racetrack trying to enter the pit lane. He hit the commitment cone, locking it up.
It's a very, very thin apron down there in the corner, and wouldn't be surprised at all as now your race leaders are in. So Freenage gives up the top spot. McClendon right on the bumper will follow him to pit road as well. So those two cars are now in. And Shane Parrish, give a shout out to the 18. A little bit of strategy, but it is a bonus point for him as he leads his first laps tonight.
And again, he's one of the drivers trying to reel in the top 16. Only 10 entries on the season, one of the lowest, in fact, other than Dylan C. Jones, really, inside the top 21. But he's going to, of course, have to come down because they're reaching the very end of this fuel window. So they're going to have to duck down and get their fuel now. Barely getting inside the commitment cone, I think, was Parrish that time.
He was awfully tight up to the yellow cone there, but he did make it down to pit road speed in time of 50 miles an hour. And next man up, Rhett McBride, who takes over the number 1 position. Comparing him to any other car, you see the 64 machine of Andrew T. Jones, who has pitted absolutely storm on through. Makes it look like we have about a half a dozen cars still that need to pit. Maybe it'll wrap up at a lap here or two. Rittenberg still out there. He, McBride, and I think that might just be it with Parrish having completed service. Connor Horn is going to be your race leader. This is why I liked the call for the 24 to come in first of your top 5, your top 10. Get that immediate benefit of the fresh tires and open up a 3-second gap because, even if those other cars, Justin, are still better than you on the long run, if Kamer and Novosad fight or whatever the duo is behind, again, it is going to be hard from a 3-second deficit to get the draft compared to, what it was before when he had Crowder on top of him.
Yeah, I understand that point of thought process. At the same time, the Crowder's thought process might have been, why do the same thing over and over and expect different results? It's essentially like trying to bang your head on a brick wall and think, oh, I'm eventually going to break through. Eventually, the thought process is going to be, oh, I should use a sledgehammer instead to try that different. That's what I think Crowder's already done a little bit, trying to get the slightly fresher tire advantage because he is getting a little bit faster. He's already moved up to net P2 on the racetrack and is looking like he's fairly confident with the amount of grip. The thing is, though, how is traffic going to come into play because the lap traffic might become an issue for this racetrack tonight because a lot of the lap cars, some of them at least, might not be as open to give up, say, that first or second line than some others on the circuit.
And Novosad was pretty nice there in the 34 machine as he got up and out of the way again. He is still yet to come down to pit road, so he's one of the cars that is really just hoping to catch a yellow flag in this cycle. But we still wait on Rhett McBride, your race leader, and Kurt Rittenberg, who is just now diving down and is going to complete his service this time. So just McBride until this service is completely cycled through. Connor Horn will then work about a 2.5-second advantage over Ashton Crowder in a battle that will be for the race win. At about 36 laps from now, we know that they can go the distance. Thought that maybe when that yellow flag came out that it would have ruined the pit strategy. Turns out just enough leeway for it to not make a big change, and now it all relies, Justin, on everybody behaving enough for this thing to stay green to the end so these drivers can see their strategies to fruition.
And that's, again, what some of these drivers are hoping. Please stay green, for the love of goodness sake, some of them might be saying. Guys, I think like Crowder might be the ones that are most open of it. 3/10 quicker last time by on the racetrack. 31.2 for Horn. Crowder, fastest driver inside the top 14 with a 38. So he is closing in. Those fresher tires are slowly reeling in the gap. Now the bigger question will be, what will be the situation at 10 to go compared to 35 to go for the difference in tires with just a 2-lap split?
Intervals that time, another 1/10 of a second down in the difference as now it sits at still that 2.6 second margin between Horn and Crowder. Crowder was just a 1/10 of a second better. Kamer a little bit too far off to be a huge factor here. Thomas George, David Washington, Dylan Jones, and Andrew Friedage are a handful of the names, Justin, that I think showed us a lot of promise in the opening half of this race. I thought they were going to be able to bridge that difference from being a 5th-ish placed car to being one of those to break into the top 3, and it just hasn't happened. They were only at times a second off, a second and a half, shortly into the start of this green flag run. just couldn't make that difference. And I think a caution flag would certainly give them an opportunity to be on equal footing to make it even. But right now, I will say I'm surprised that more of those names didn't get into this picture. Could still happen. A lot can happen in this 35-lap run to the end of the race. But it does certainly look like it'll be decided amongst Horn and Crowder. That gap now down to 2 seconds in the battle for the race lead. They have 7 seconds to the next closest car, which is Thomas George.
Yeah, Freenosh, I'm honestly a little surprised, yes, about he just hasn't shown good short run speed much of the night to get himself forward in the racetrack, and why I think in part he struggled a little bit in the qualifying session, say if he had to burp the throttle. That's why track position is kind of key on this circuit. If you don't have it, it's hard to gain it back unless you have a flurry of caution flags and restarts to try and take advantage and move yourself to the bottom line. Freenosh really hasn't had that chance all night, and that's why I think at this point he's all the way back in that mix for 8th. Guys, though, like George, lost a ton of time with their different strategies. It's actually slower with the traffic right now. Remember, he was in the mix for the lead, only a couple of seconds behind still. He's now 6 seconds behind and still has drivers with a little bit fresher tires closing in potentially.
It is creeping in, and of course, as the fall-off starts to even out throughout the field, I think it'll be pretty difficult for the Georges, the Kamers, and so on and so forth. Dave Washington in P5 to make the difference and to be able to jump up there. I think it is going to be a Horn and Crowder battle, and what I'm seeing now is that Ashton Crowder's the better race car. Again, he did a pit a little bit later. That explains why he went from being on the bumper to Horn to being those 3 seconds off, simply because Horn got fresh rubber before he did. So Crowder does have a small tire benefit of about 3 laps. Again, that advantage is going to fade more and more as we get deeper into this race. I just think the 27 has the better race car, and he is not going to sit on the bumper. And I don't know if he was necessarily being patient, but he wasn't forcing the issue, Justin, before the pit stops when he was near Connor Horn. If he gets to him, don't expect him to take it easy on him. I think the 27's best opportunity, go for the pass right when you catch up to the 24 car. Don't sit back. Don't wait around and set it up and make it pretty. You're 2 to 3 tenths a second faster per lap. You got to time this one right. Might be your best opportunity you'll get.
And he might get some a little help here because you got lap cars in Stanford and Chambliss on fresher tires too. They'll also hold up Horn potentially when he reaches the back bumper here. So this might be the perfect window. He's going to let him on by for now, sacrifice a couple tenths here before they get to the corner. However, they're going to reach Horn at a very bad spot. That could potentially lose more so time for the 24 machine if Crowder has it played the right way and how he hopes it to do. This is going to get, I think, right into Crowder's hands as long as this plays out right.
The 19 machine also is kind of an indiscriminate factor in all of this. Eric Stanford, that lap down car side by side with Crowder. It will slow him down a little bit. Stanford, of course, really just trying to mind his own business and get back to the lead lap after he pitted at lap number 84, so he's also good to go the distance. Just finds himself off cycle in all of this, and he'll actually get in front of Crowder here. See how that'll affect those two as Connor Horn dealing with lap traffic of his own, seeing Brian Chambliss pass him in the 45.
I think the 27 wanted Stanford to clear him about a lap or so ago because he lost a lot of time having to go side by side with Stanford. Now, though, he's going to have to see Stanford first off. Only a couple lap fresher tires than the both of them, really. Remember, he was the driver who locked up the brakes and had to go a second time around to be able to duck down to the pit lane. He can potentially follow the hole Stanford makes to try and make this pass if he times it up right, I think. Because still the gap is more than 5 seconds to Thomas J. George and the rest of the field.
And that's still a healthy margin. This time by lap number 100. Going to be in the books. 25 laps still to go from Kentucky as we wait to see if it'll be Connor Horn headed to victory lane for the second time this season, or if Ashton Crowder, a late entry into the 2019 campaign, will get his first of the season. It's down to that time, 0.666 seconds between first and second. Stanford now going to be a big thing here. If you're Horn, you don't necessarily want to lift and let Stanford go on by, Justin, but you hope that he passes you without you having to battle with him much at all. If these two get side by side at all, that could allow the 27 to bridge those extra couple of car lengths that he's been looking for.
And that's exactly what I think Crowder is hoping happens. See Stanford get to the bottom, get side by side with Horn, then get on by and take advantage of the lost amount of speed. The difference in the time, at least a couple tenths, at least 3-4 tenths, just by riding side by side with the race car. This is going to end up potentially happening because I don't think Stanford's going to fully clear by Horn in the corner, forces Horn to check up. And this is where Crowder takes advantage and is able to get a little bit earlier in the gas, while Horn loses the clean air advantage he had.
Now he's sucked in a lot behind Stanford. How is the 19 machine slowly pulling away going to affect him? Is he going to use the draft as an advantage, or as you mentioned, that dirty air on the front of the car, is that going to take the downforce away and allow Crowder to make the difference? Both these cars now feeling the same thing. What Connor Horn's dealing with off of the lapped car Stanford is the exact same thing that Crowder's dealing with off of Horn. This might be the only time Crowder is, on even playing field with Horn, because as Stanford gets further and further away, it's going to be cleaner air on the nose of the 24. Horn's going to be better, and we know how critical and how advantageous it has been to have that clean air when you're in a two-way scrap for the race lead, like we're seeing right now.
And it became a major factor, remember, in some of the battles for position in the peak race. It was talked about again by Randy Chinnett at the top of the broadcast. That's how significant the dirty air has been at Kentucky this week. And this is, again, something we've seen at tracks like Charlotte, like Kansas, where you can go more full throttle longer time. That was why the tire difference within 5 laps was such a big, advantageous cushion on the circuit. The thing is, though, if Horn doesn't get away from Stanford's back bumper at least about a second back, this is going to get worse and worse, and that's going to allow Crowder to potentially try and jump as Horn gets more and more tighter, I think, trying to get away. You're trying to use the Stanford strap down the straight, but pushes in the corner.
Into the home stretch now, inside of 20 laps to go. This Kentucky 125 that has seen just that one and only early caution flag before what would have been a first cycle of the green flag pit stops. We did see them, though, since then, uninterrupted, since a lap 33 restart. Lap traffic and a whole lot of other factors have shaped the battle for the race win. You're watching now as Crowder looks to the inside. I think trying to catch Connor Horn off guard will not happen there, as they'll both look to get around Miller, and a very respectful move by the 23 to get down and out of the way. Let those two go at it. Although now, though, the 27 machine might get held up a tad bit there, not being able to arc turn 3 like he would have wanted to.
Yeah, but he still had the preferred second groove, essentially, above that first seam. Here comes the run, though. He's got a shot.
To the inside he comes, side by side. He'll go in so deep into turn 1. It's the slide job. Connor Horn with a crossover. Barely doesn't take him out, and what a move by both those cars. Connor Horn knew that Ashton Crowder used that same move on George to get second position away. He drove it in so deep, and the 24 car saw it coming.
And he needed it to stay side by side down the backstretch for this move to even work, to stick the crossover. Horn, he got Horn to do what he wanted. The thing is, he lost too much momentum, sent it in too deep, I think. If he can try it a little bit softer, not as big of a speed discrepancy on the exit of turn 2, then Crowder can try and push down Horn below that first seam and then try and take away. He's going to try and I think again 1 or 2 more times at least. They've got a gigantic cushion to keep on battling, mind you, over George. He can do it at least 3-4 more times.
It is down to 4.6 seconds. The difference between these top two and Thomas J. George, who runs in third. The updated interval this time by to 4.5, so it is closing. But again, at the closing rate, I don't see those cars becoming a factor unless your top two start swapping a little bit of paint and sheet metal. But it was a game of chicken. Last lap into the quarter, Crowder stuck the nose out first, wanted to go to the inside of Horn, and probably had a little bit of a nose on the quarter panel, but the 24 drove him all the way to the apron to protect the inside line, so these drivers are going at it, no holds barred.
Yeah, and both of these drivers now have spotters. Zach Carr was brought in during, it looks like, the second half of this race to try and help Horn, knowing he had a shot to win this race. So both of their spotters are probably telling the information. You got a car right below you, please do not cut across the bumper, because if Horn did that, let's say, he might be the one getting the worst of the damage, not Crowder, you might think, because of the loose conditions. So it's going to continue to get interesting here. I think the tires, though, with the slide job, might have equalized these tires a lot more than the 27 was hoping for.
And this is the risk that you take, of course. You could have followed him down to the pit lane, and I've always been a fan of the short pit. That's why I thought that maybe Crowder would go for it. Of course, Connor Horn pitted early. It gave him the advantage, and we're right back to square one. Crowder was on the bumper when Horn pitted. They're back at a bumper now to the end of the longest green flag run of the night. However, I think just the track position matters a lot with the worn tires, and this thing could very well come down to Crowder having to hunt on that bumper to move Connor Horn up and out of the way, get him a little bit loose and uncomfortable, because the 24, despite the pressure he's been dealing with, has handled it very well and hasn't had a misstep.
Yeah, he hasn't made too many mistakes. He's gotten a little rough at the end of the runs, but other than that, he's been looking very strong. He's been able to take advantage of this clean air once he got it from Thomas J. George after that first yellow flag on lap 30. Now, this is where he's going to have to prove he can win this race based on strategy, based on pressure from behind. Last race, remember, he was one of the better cars. He tried to go for a potential one-stop, turned into a two-stop after Freenosh crashed as the leader, had to take a tow truck because he couldn't get the engine restarted in the middle of the front, right at the start and finish line at Sonoma. This race is going to be where Horn can really show his talent to see if he can win and play defense against some of the best in the closing stages of a race.
This time by, the number will be just 10 laps to go for the virtual Kentucky Speedway. Some of these battles rage on throughout the pack as Washington's at a race high P4. Ferdinand, McClendon, Jones, yeah, they're all on top of each other, and here comes another dive to the inside, but I don't think Ferdinand is going to get it, and David Washington is going to have his hands full, but may just end up at a top 10 position before the night's done. I wonder if Thomas George is a little bit too far ahead of him, if he could crack a podium position after starting back in 17th, but it's a waiting game now and trying to keep our eyes split on both the battle for the race lead Justin and this group from 4th on back.
Yeah, right now I think it's going to be very difficult. Mind you, Freenosh is trying to race teammates. He's also reeled in quietly Thomas J. George as this is going on, but a little bit faster, this group all lined up compared to the 9. So George is starting to fall off again. Remember, George has been tighter in the mid-run or further on in his car. So this could turn potentially into a battle instead of 4th for 3rd position if it's timed up well by some of these drivers. Meanwhile, that lead, it looks like Horn is starting to reel in Stanford's draft all of a sudden in front of them.
And that could be the difference maker here. The 24 machine, in theory, no longer has the clean air advantage, but if he is in the wake of Eric Stanford's draft, then it'd make it more difficult for Ashton Crowder. Did maybe that big drive to the inside when we saw Crowder go for the crossover? I wonder if that really heated up the tires. And it is the night race, of course, cooler conditions, just 87-degree track temps, but I mean, you drive it in hard into a corner like that, not really make the exit, not going to do good things for you. You heat the tires up and you're not going to have time to cool them down. So that's the status of the battle for the lead. This other battle still ongoing as Scott McClendon is having one of the best races he's had all year now, going toe-to-toe with Ferdinand, this one behind Washington for P5.
And that all started really with Jeremy Miller forcing the drivers to have to go below him as Washington gets a shot from Freenosh all of a sudden. They're getting door-to-door, bumper-to-bumper for this 4th spot.
I think Freenage wants to go on the outside, but he was boxed in there. He'll get back in front of McClendon. Now here comes Jones to the inside. So side by side for position 6. But again, the bottom just can't get the rotation off of the quarter. And that's why this battle seems to be in gridlock just like the other. Freenage tries to block. McClendon to the outside. Can he make that line work in one? No, he can't.
Yeah, McClendon tried. He needed to get side by side, but Freenage pushed too much. This might open up the door for McClendon to try and clear him by 3, then take away that line to get a top 5 spot. Just couldn't do it though. Freenage able to just send it a bit more aggressive on the gas.
You can see McClendon struggles off of the corner. He gets tight, but leaves enough room for the 88. Freenage obliges, slides high. 5 laps to go from Kentucky Speedway. Battle for the race lead. It's Crowder to the inside. He's all over the left rear quarter panel of Connor Horn. He made it stick for that time being. Once again, now into turn number 3, he comes again. Side by side once more, but he can't get back into the gas, and Horn holds off another challenge.
Yeah, it looked like he got the chance after getting a better run, despite Horn cutting across that apron to try and break up the draft. It's gonna get very dicey as race control telling the lap cars, get out of the way, don't be a factor for this race victory because you got Novosad and Stanford now a bit more slower than the top 2 drivers.
And this could crowd things up front now with 2 of them. As you mentioned, the 34s up there as well. You really got to hope that you don't get stuck behind. Again, the battle you're watching is for the white and red number 24 of Connor Horn and the silver and black 27 of Ashton Crowder. The other 2 are lapped cars. The 34 will drop out of the way. It looks like staying high is Stanford, and it is clear sailing ahead. They're going to come next time by to take 2 laps to go. I think Ashton Crowder might have one good challenge left in him. He gets to the bumper, inside line in turn number 3. He'll get squished all the way down to the yellow line. Can he make the car stick? No, a big bobble.
He clipped the apron, got too loose, had to close up the time. I don't think there's enough time for Crowder to try and close up with 2 laps to go.
He gave up a lot of time there. The 24 pinched him. Ashton Crowder played the game, and now he finds himself 5 car lengths back. Really tight that time, up against the outside wall. If they get to the white flag, this race will be official. Ashton Crowder needs a miracle for the final 1.5 miles.
And he's trying to push as hard as he can, nearly slapped the wall again off turn 4. He's trying to go near full throttle to try and reel him in as the white flag's up in the air. It's going to take a ton of effort and luck potentially for Crowder to get this job done now.
Low lap traffic ahead, but it should not be a factor. Connor Horn, 4 car lengths is the difference. Can Ashton Crowder make one last-ditch effort into turn number 3? He'll go high to wind it up. And Connor Horn to the inside line. It is going to be enough to hang on. And for the first time on an oval, Connor Horn's a winner in 2019. His 2nd of the year comes tonight. Winner at Kentucky Speedway.
And how about that for a race, my friends? Heck of a battle between 2 of some of the best drivers in the entire series. Crowder, one of the best drivers in all of the service. Heck of a battle, but for Horn, this will probably be one of the biggest victories of his entire year on all of iRacing, knowing he had to play defense and for the first time on the Oval, able to hold off the best of the best to take the checker flag.
He's had some great races, but it's gotta feel good to hold off a black stripe like that. He and Crowder went head-to-head, not just for that last 20-lap run to the end, not just that last fuel run, but since the race start at lap number 33. Of course, a race winner already this season as he took home his first official win of the campaign. And of course, that one coming on the road course at the Sonoma Raceway. But tonight, a points race win at an oval for the Speedway Chevy Camaro of Connor Horn. And he certainly deserves to celebrate this one as he burns it down on a front straightaway.
Yeah, a hell of a run once again for Horn. And there's been so many cases, as mentioned, where guys like Freenage have taken advantage, taken what could have been potential wins. It's out of his hands and taken off and away at the end of long runs. Guys like Jason Jacoby fighting to try and battle for victories as well with him. but Horn able to hold them off this time. A heck of a run for him, with Crowder and George inside that top 3 as well.
The final margin of victory is just 0.2 of a second as Connor Horn hangs on for the race win tonight from Kentucky Speedway. We'll take one final opportunity to step aside, and when we come back, it'll be the LSR TV post-race show. We'll talk with your top finishers and get you set for an off week as we get set to return on the 29th of the month. That one from the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. More coverage still to come from this evening. You're watching LSR TV's continuing coverage of the 2019 Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series powered by Sim Racers for Mental Health. We'll talk with your top finishers next on the iRacing Esports Network.
The most realistic online racing sim ever made. This is iRacing. Detailed laser scan tracks, fully dynamic real world cars, and over 50 series to choose from. 6 online world championships offering over $100,000 in annual prizes. This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of LSR TV and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Live Sim Racing LLC and iRacing.com Motorsport Simulations. LSR TV would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. And back live from the virtual Kentucky Speedway, where LSR TV's continuing coverage of the 2019 Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series, powered by Sim Racers for Mental Health, rolled on tonight with the Kentucky 125. As we welcome you into the LSR TV post-race show right here on your home for sim racing at the iRacing Esports Network. Evan Pasoko, Justin Prince upstairs with you. We will go trackside in just a moment and talk with your top finishers. But first, let's take a look top to bottom at our Ford Entertainment Group full race results. It is Connor Horn to victory lane. What a fight. He had Ashton Crowder all the way down to the white flag. The final margin of victory, 0.214 seconds, puts the 24 in victory lane for the second time this season. Thomas J. George, not to forget about the 9 car, finished 5 seconds back in third. Those are the drivers that will be standing by with us in just a few moments. Big run, though, for David Washington. Would be remiss to not give a call to the driver of the 98 machine. He goes 17th to 4th tonight. Scott McClendon's a top 5 car as well. Dylan Jones, 29th to 6th. Just one of many cars who had good runs, but maybe we're just a restart short from bringing it all to fruition. Andrew Ferdinand ends up in 7th position this evening, with Jonathan Cadell coming home in 8th spot. Kyle Kamer is P9, and Rhett McBride rounds out your top 10.
Andrew T. Jones came away with 11th, with Shane Parrish having a quietly decent run in 12th position. Scott Brotherton 13th, Jeremy Bazemore 14th was the first driver to pit, while Nicholas Caldwell finished in 15th. Jeremy Rittenberg in 16th. Last driver in the lead lap, though, was Anthony Fredericks. We've seen a couple of the drivers, first drivers lap down, a part of that mix for a moment. Stanford, Kalis, and Miller round out the top 20 a lap down.
And continuing on through your running order here, some of these cars were still in it. That includes 21st position for Kurt Rittenberg, 22nd for Matt Miller, along with Brad Bohr in 23rd, Todd Novosad and Kayla Wheatley, 24th and 25th. The rest of the cars, though, out of this one, it'll include Brian Chambliss in 26th position, Tommy Gossett, 27th after a connection issue, Blake O'Connell in 28th, and of course, Jason Jacoby was fighting for top spots tonight, was involved in the only yellow flag of the evening, and he rounds out the field in 29th spot all the way at the back. That's been a look top to bottom at your Ford Entertainment Group full race results. FEGPC has been serving the iRacing community with custom-built affordable computers specifically built and tuned for iRacing. Your PC will come with everything you need preloaded so you can get racing as soon as it hits your doorstep. Get yours today and join the 600-plus iRacers already enjoying a Ford Entertainment Group computer, PCs to fit every budget from $540 and up. For more information, go online to fegpc.net, and if you mention code LSRTV10, you can get your build quoted today. Let's head down to RealSimRacing Cup Series victory lane, for the second time this season, we're stood by with race winner Connor Horn. This one coming tonight from the virtual Kentucky Speedway. Connor, congratulations on the win. I know earlier in the year, fighting and finally getting the unofficial points, the unofficial All-Star race, I should say, win at Charlotte, and then, of course, getting that first points win at Sonoma for as many times and as how close you had come many times, how good that must have felt. But tonight, to go head-to-head with Ashton Crowder, you guys battling for the better part of 90 laps uninterrupted, all the way down to the end. It was thrilling for us to watch. What was it like to be a part of?
For sure tiring. I don't know if I've worked harder for many wins, especially with this package. That's sort of the hardest I've ever worked. I had a feeling if I just, kind of like I tried it at Dover, if I beat the guy in second in the pits, I felt like I was going to win, and I knew he'd be faster than me, but I knew he was going to be driving hard to get to me after that last set of pit stops, and if I just controlled the air like I was on the second run, then I felt like he wasn't going to be able to beat me. And it was definitely going to be a completely different race if the first and only yellow didn't come out because of Jacoby. But unfortunately, Thomas didn't get the best of stops, and I was able to beat him out. Ashton was able to get around him at some point afterwards, and the race ended up playing out quite differently. Would have been interesting with 2 green flag pit stops probably with me, Thomas, and Ashton, but me and Ashton were able to pull away after our strategies worked out the best, and all the lap traffic around us was really playing a factor. We had cars in between us, we had cars in front of us, behind us, passing us, and especially at the end of the race, it almost dictated the race. It almost lost it for me because of the 19 and I think the 34 not getting out of the way that well, but I was able to pinch him down. I felt that was my last chance to hold him behind me. I pinched him down. I gave him enough room for a car length, but he just barely clipped the apron. And I think out of 4, I had a good feeling that was the race, and it ended up being the race.
Of course, we saw on the restarts the 3-wide action and those clusters of cars here and there. But this race certainly felt different than most of the intermediate tracks have this year with this package. Would you agree with that statement? And if so, what is it about this Kentucky Speedway that eats away at these tires and lets you kind of race a little bit more head-to-head as opposed to being trapped in those big herds?
Well, I'm not sure how bad the 2 starts we had were behind me, but it was definitely a lot more tame, and I think that's because everyone knows how bumpy Kentucky is, old Kentucky to be more specific. It's very ungodly on tires. It just eats them up really quickly. If you're running the wrong lane, you're going to get pretty much screwed. And I think especially with this new package, with the aero push and everything, you just can't really switch lanes a lot. You can't really do 3 wide because it's just always going to end up bad. Luckily, everyone pretty much knew that was going to be the case, and no one really tried anything that outlandish, and we were able to have another really good race here on our side.
This should pick up, of course, a handful more points for you with the second win of the season. The really only benefit you get out of these is the bonus points at the start of the playoffs. They don't lock you in, but if you start to tally up a few more of these before we're done, you could have some healthy bonus points going in to the round of 16. But you were the highest driver in the point standings with the amount of starts that you've made, 3 less than the maximum that some drivers have made. What's the outlook with 6 races to go? New Hampshire, Watkins Glen, Michigan, the immediate future.
I feel like Michigan's anyone's. I think Watkins Glen, I have a good chance to sweep. There's a couple question marks like New Hampshire coming up, but I feel really confident that I'd be second if I was able to start all the races, and I'd be pretty close to Andrew. I feel like I'm getting used to this package more and more, getting more comfortable, being able to know what my car can do and what it can't, and I feel like I'm really going to come on strong when it matters most.
You have certainly turned it up a notch in these last few weeks. Second win in the last 4 times out for you, backing up that win from a couple of weeks ago at Sonoma. Finally a week off, though, to sit back and enjoy it. We're sure that you'll be right back at it here when we go racing from the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Connor, though, as always, and tonight from Victory Lane, the sponsors and the shout-outs makes it happen for you and the team.
We got obviously Speedway, which is the main part of us. We have Menards, Berlin Raceway, NZXT, Hammer Bowling, everyone that's with our HBR team. Brian and Jeremy were really great. They got out of the way clean for me and Ashton, not just me. They played a great race there. It sucks that Skylar couldn't make the race because of his technical troubles, but he probably would have been right up there. Kentucky's one of his favorite tracks. I think he would have been up there with me and Ashton, and Matt Close, Zach Card, another couple guys that really helped me and all the other guys out. It's just a really great bunch of guys we got here.
We appreciate them, and as well appreciate you and all the drivers for supporting this series and being here on Monday nights. Connor, again, congratulations on the win. Like we said there, maybe you'll make this a trend, and we'll see what you got in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, hopefully see you soon, man. I don't doubt it.
We've been seeing a lot of you at Victory Lane. It's his second win of the season for the driver of the number 24 machine. That's Connor Horn, your winner in tonight's Kentucky 125. Flip side of that great battle is a runner-up finish for Ashton Crowder. He's trackside with Justin.
Thank you very much, Evan. Ashton Crowder coming away second in a fierce battle against Horn. Horn described it as tiring. How do you describe tonight's race, Ashton?
Very difficult, for sure. The dirty air was a lot worse than I expected. I watched a few NIS fixed races, and from the outside, it didn't appear like that bad. So I was like, could probably run pretty decently close to people, probably closer than you could in peak, but you just really couldn't. So yeah, that was really hard to manage. But I started getting the hang of it about halfway through. But Connor, just his ability to, I don't want to use block because that takes credit away from his driving, but just his ability to stay in my lane. No, it's like he was reading my mind. Just stay in front of me, and every single corner is really good. But yeah, the car drove all right. It's just super tight.
There was one point in the race, though, where you did get a chance to pass him with that dive bomb move in turn 1. Then someone had to get off the gas. Talk us through the decision, of course, first off, to try and make that said move, and 2, the thought process of trying to make sure that would, if there was a chance, to try and make that stick to try and get that lead away.
Yeah, I've done it a few times in the past, I think 2 or 3 races on people in peak. Like, I tried it for the first time with Dylan Duvall and Ray Alfala in 1 and 2 at Chicagoland, and it was a pretty Billy Big Balls maneuver, but it made it stick, and then I did it again to Ray in 3 in that same race. So from there, kind of know now that you can do it and make it work, and it's not really that dangerous. But yeah, you need a lot of drive, and you need a car that has a lot of rear stability and grip, and the fixed setups just don't really have the same downforce we have in peak, so it's really hard to make it work. But looking back on it, I probably should have tried it in 3. I think that was the only place where I could really get back on the gas. But yeah, he once again, like, he played it perfectly and got back under me, and basically drove away again. So big props to him.
Yeah, it was a heck of a battle, have to admit, though, in terms of that, though. However, next race on the schedule heads to New Hampshire, 150 laps, a short track. Some people don't like calling it a short track in the national media, have to honestly say, but your thoughts on New Hampshire after we have a break on July the 29th?
To the short track argument, if it runs brake ducts, I consider it a short track. So I don't know if it does. If it does, it's definitely a short track to me.
Well, it's a mile.
Okay, yeah, we're going with short track in my opinion. But to be honest, I very heavily despise that track. So I have to put in some practice there. I think I've ran like maybe one or two C fixed in like a 3-year time span there. And I know I did an NIS race like 2 years ago with Logan Clampett, and I absolutely sucked. Um, so yeah, I'll have to do a lot of practice for that, but it's a good track. I wish we could have like the traction compound, the PJ1. Like, I wish we could have that. I think it would make it a better race, but it'd be really interesting to see how it races with this package for sure.
Anyone you want to thank before we let you go here tonight?
Yeah, for sure. Everyone at Burton Kligerman, Esports, Parker, Jeff, Logan, the boys at SCR that, are getting my setups done for Peak and everything, or getting them done and helping me. Christian, Dave Siltman, Seth DeMerchant, just everyone really doing a really good job. And, you guys for putting on the broadcast and just RSR in general. I haven't ran this in a while and been doing it the past like 3 weeks, I think, and having a lot of fun. So hopefully we can continue to have a good time and yeah, just maybe get a win or two and keep some momentum rolling.
Glad you're having fun, and congratulations on the second place finish, Ashton.
Thank you.
That is Ashton Crowder coming away second tonight in this evening's event. Thomas J. George came away in third. He's standing by with Evan.
We are standing by with the driver of the number 9 Chevrolet. And Thomas, congratulations on a good result. I feel like it would be unfair to say it was a quiet night for you. You started up front, and you were up front for all of it. It just seemed like in the run to the checkered flag, the 2 guys in front of you were trying to take each other out, and the 4 behind you were doing the same thing. So you kind of ended up in a little bit of a safe space. How'd that 9 machine get there, though, over the course of the night?
Well, I didn't need that caution to come out because I was pulling away from Conan there. I thought I saw he made a mistake coming out of 4 the last lap ago or something like that, the previous lap. And the guy that caused the caution. Seems to do that quite a bit, so that didn't help. Then we got to pit road, and my pit crew decided to go get some ice cream sandwiches or something, which cost us the lead there. And as the night wore on, the car just never seemed to. It never seemed to do what I wanted it to do. That right front just seemed to burn off, even though I thought we had the same tire wear. It's just the way that the package is, you have to keep the momentum in it, but when the tires are falling off so quick, it'll die out if you're not careful. So, I mean, I'm not too upset. Finishing third tonight is good result after getting run over last week by another driver I won't name, and Chicagoland getting collected. So I'll take a third place finish going into the off week.
It off week certainly gives you an opportunity to regroup and try to assess the situation. Of course, you mentioned those couple of rough weeks in a row here. The good news is you stay a top 5 car in the championship. Of course, putting you very safe with 6 races to go before the playoffs start. The only thing that you can stand to benefit from now would be, of course, break it into victory lane to snag a few bonus points to give you a small leg up on the competition. Of course, that is valid for any of the rounds, not just the regular season, and headed off into the round of 16. If you had to eye a specific track coming up, we have a lot of unique ones. New Hampshire, Watkins Glen, Michigan, Bristol, Darlington, Indy. We kind of lose the cookie cutters for a while. Where do you feel like maybe your best opportunity will come from?
Well, tonight was one, but I've always run well at Kentucky. Probably lost 2 or 3 wins or something like that over the years. I'd say Michigan, Bristol, Indy, and Darlington are all strong tracks of mine. Those are probably the ones I'm going to focus on more than any, just because I will say this though, with this package, I don't know how it's going to turn out this time. It's different with 550 horsepower and a ton of downforce compared to years past with 750, 850 horsepower and either downforce or no downforce. So New Hampshire, I never look forward to New Hampshire. I'll just be happy to get out of there with a good result and just get out of there, because it's I think it's the worst track on the schedule, if I'm honest. So if anybody's a New Hampshire fan, I'm sorry, but that's just my opinion. But we'll figure it out. We just gotta keep putting ourselves in position like tonight, and we'll figure it out. We just gotta get a little extra speed in the car.
Well, I will say, not that I can drive at any racetrack, but I'm not a fan of that joint either, so you're not on your own there. It'll be a tough one for you in 2 weeks' time, but you do have the off week to kick back and relax a little bit and catch your breath, Thomas. So 4 weeks in a row here, back at the grind on a Monday night, so we'll let you enjoy that off week and get out of here. Before we do, though, as always, sponsors, shout-outs, all those folks who brings the 9 car to the racetrack every week.
Just think Milwaukee, Sirius XM, a little Mountain Dew for some little sugar rush or something like that. iRacing, iFlag, nice little device there. Go check out their website. Thank all my teammates for having good runs tonight, all things considered, and thank you guys for broadcasting and putting on the show for us.
We appreciate your support of the series, Thomas. Again, congratulations on your top 3 tonight, and who knows, maybe something fun will happen in 2 weeks. We'll get to chat with you in New Hampshire.
Hey, if I win New Hampshire, it'll be pure luck. That's all I'm gonna say.
Stranger things have happened, so we'll see. We'll let you get out of here. That's the driver who comes home in 3rd place tonight, and again, a top 5 car in the championship all season long. Good points and a good recovery for the driver of the Milwaukee Tool Chevrolet, Thomas George. As always, big thanks to Top 3 for giving us a little bit of extra time post-race tonight. Race winner Connor Horn, Ashton Crowder, and Thomas J. George. That does it for us here tonight for the virtual Kentucky Speedway. 17 races now complete in 2019. And we have an off week before we get set for a stretch of 6 races in 7 weeks. The regular season is almost done, and our championship picture is getting clearer by the minute. That'll do it, though, for us as we step aside. As always, want to thank all of the people at LSR TV for making these broadcasts possible, from behind the scenes and those upstairs and downstairs on the broadcast on a week-by-week basis. We also want to thank all of you for tuning in tonight on the iRacing Esports Network. On behalf of myself, Evan Pasoko, for Justin Prince and our producer downstairs, Brett Wheeler, we want to thank you for tuning in and congratulate Connor Horn, a 2-time winner now, first on the oval, coming tonight from the Kentucky Speedway. We take next Monday off, and we will return on Monday, July the 29th for the virtual New Hampshire Motor Speedway. That race and every race of the 2019 Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series, powered by Sim Racers for Mental Health, can be found right here on LSR TV at the iRacing Esports Network. Until next time, good night from Kentucky.